the Federalists. So, really, all of these events that we've been looking at is causing partisanship to rise during the 1790s. Ordinary Americans are being drawn into the entire political process. They're basically taking sides on, the French Revolution, Jay's Treaty, the Treaty of San Lorenzo, the Whiskey Rebellion, but also, Hamilton's different reports and how to deal with the debt and everything like that. There's so many things I can't even list them all. So really what we're seeing here, as much as people are being drawn into this political process, is also that a national identity is basically being created and contested at this time. You even have women engaging in these arguments and organizing their own demonstrations. And right as this is all happening, Washington is going to decide to retire from public life in 1796. Most of his farewell address is going to be a denunciation of partisanship. He's also going to warn against, permanent foreign alliances. He cautioned parties as well that were characterized by geographical discriminations, because we're already going to start seeing that, and you can see that on this map a little bit more. Despite these fears, the election of 1796 is the first openly partisan election in American history. We're going to have John Adams running against Thomas Jefferson. John Adams is the Federalist, while Thomas Jefferson, of course, is the Jeffersonian Republican. John Adams will become the next president, and then Thomas Jefferson will be the vice president accordingly. So at this time when they voted, it was you were voting for the president, and whoever got first became the president, and whoever got second became the vice president. That is not how things work anymore, and we'll get to why in the next PowerPoint. You can also see already a bit of a North versus South divide between Adams and Jefferson and the Federalists and the Jeffersonian Republicans as well. So, we have John Adams takes the presidency, and we have to keep in mind there's still some problems with the French at this time. The thing is, in 1795, the French had denounced Jay's Treaty as an American alliance with Great Britain, and they had gone on to annul the whole commercial treaty of 1778 with the United States. They also ordered the seizure of any American ships that were carrying goods to the British, and declared that any American sailors mixed in with British troops would be similarly executed. So this is problematic, because we've gone from, Jay's Treaty was trying to avoid war with Britain, but in a way it causes the United States almost to go to war with France. And so to avoid war in 1797, Adams is going to send 3 commissioners known as X, Y, and Z to Paris to try and work something out with the French. Quick note, one of these commissioners is actually John Marshall, a future head of the Supreme Court and everything, so we'll talk about him way later, but I always like to point that out for people. The thing is, X, Y, and Z were treated with contempt by the French. The French they were not in a mood to compromise with the United States. In fact, they wanted a large bribe to even initiate talks. They also wanted a loan of something like $12 million. So when nothing could be worked out, what happens is in 1798, the Senate would publish the full account of all of this insulting behavior done by the French, and what comes to be known as the XYZ affair. So now people are publicly extremely frustrated with the French, so much so that war fever sweeps across the country. By the fall of 1798, American ships are waging basically an undeclared war against the French in the Caribbean waters, and this conflict actually comes to be known as the quasi-war, because it's never a formal war. Federalists in Congress, therefore, are basically preparing for America to have to go to war with the French. And so they're going to prepare for this by voting to create a vastly expanded army. They also put the Provisional Army under Washington's command. Washington thought he could retire. And then all of this is very expensive, and so to pay for it all, they're going to push through the direct tax of 1798, which was levied on land, people who were enslaved, and dwellings. This is going to be really important later. We're going to come back to that direct tax, but know that they're pushing through so that they're preparing for war, basically. So, I ask you this as a part of your journal. At this point in time, how should America have reacted, in your opinion? Do you think America should have gone to war with France? Gone to war with Great Britain? Neither? Kind of explain your reasoning. Give you a second to pause if you want to write down your answer. The Federalists are also going to see this impending conflict with the French as basically an opportunity to stamp out any dissent against them and to really cement some sort of alliance with Great Britain and strengthen and consolidate basically all of the powers of the national government. So the Federalists are going to pass 4 laws in 1798 that are known collectively as the Alien and Sedition Acts. Now I'm going to go into all 4 of these, but keep in mind you can definitely find these in your book. So the first of the 4 is the Alien Enemies Act. This basically empowered the president to deport foreigners who came from countries at war with the United States. So if America was to declare war on France, they could deport French foreigners, basically. The second was the Alien Friends Act. This authorized the president to expel any alien resident that he suspected of subversive activities. So once again, they can kick foreigners out of the nation if they suspect that they might be involved in some sort of subversive activity. The third is the Naturalization Act. This is going to extend the residency requirement for American citizenship from 5 years to 14 years. So much longer to become an American citizen now. And then the fourth of all of these is the Sedition Act, which basically made it a federal crime to engage in any conspiracy against the government, such as like to utter or print anything, and I quote, false, scandalous, and malicious against the government. Now, if you're listening to these, you might be going, well, wait a second, some of this, especially that last one, the Sedition Act, seems like, it's limiting freedom of speech and everything, and that's problematic in itself. But what was even more problematic about it is the Federalists are going to be blatantly partisan in their enforcement of especially the Sedition Act against the Republicans. And so this is going to cause a backlash from the Republican Party, and I'm going to get into that on the next PowerPoint.